I'm 22 years old, working in the medical field as a floater medical technician. My job takes me to various assisted living, skilled nursing, and independent living facilities across the state. Every week, I get a new schedule that can put me anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours away from home. Sometimes the days drag on late into the night, but I don't mind too much. I've always been used to long drives. My parents used to call 4-hour road trips day trips, so I learned to roll with it. Where I live is pretty rural. Lots of back roads and forests stretching for miles. The kind of place that would feel eerie in a scary story, with its dark, winding roads and endless trees. But for me, the woods have always been more peaceful than unsettling. I've lived around them my whole life. This particular night was no different, at first. I'd just finished up at a clinic around 6 p.m. It was winter, so it was already dark. Tired and hungry, I was ready for the hour and 45-minute drive back home. The first half hour of the trip was easy enough. Smooth highways, lo-fi music playing softly as I decompressed. Then I saw it. A massive crash up ahead. 4, maybe 5 cars, completely tangled in a nasty pileup. The highway was gridlocked, and it was obvious I wasn't going anywhere soon. I decided to take the next exit, figuring I'd cut through some back roads and get home faster than waiting for the wreckage to clear. The detour led me through a small, forgotten town. Calling it a town felt generous. The place looked like something out of a post-apocalyptic movie. Boarded up houses, crumbling buildings, no lights, no cars, nothing. The roads were cracked and uneven, so I had to slow down to avoid stressing my car. My tires groaned as they rolled over potholes, and the suspension wasn't much happier. It was dead silent. No signs of life anywhere, just the faint crunch of my tires and the hum of my engine. I've seen rundown places before, but this one felt wrong. Still, I pressed on, creeping along at 15 or 20 miles an hour with my brights cutting through the darkness. As I passed an abandoned fire department, I heard it. A loud thunk on the roof of my car. I froze. Panicked. I pulled into the parking lot of the fire department and jumped out, heart racing. I expected to see a tree branch or maybe a chunk of debris denting the roof of my car, but when I looked, there was nothing there. Puzzled, I walked around to the back of the car, thinking maybe whatever it was had rolled off. But the road behind me was empty. No branches, no rocks, nothing. I chalked it up to something harmless, like a bird or bat hitting my car and flying away, though it didn't sit right. Shaken, I climbed back inside and locked the doors. As I sat there, trying to collect myself, the silence pressed in. That's when I heard it. A piercing, blood-curdling scream ripped through the night. It sounded human, but so raw and agonized that it made my skin crawl. The kind of scream that makes you picture someone in unimaginable pain, their vocal cords about to snap. I didn't wait to find out who or what it was. I locked the doors, gripped the steering wheel, and pulled back onto the road. It's just a bobcat, I kept telling myself, gripping the steering wheel with trembling hands. Bobcats scream like women in distress. It's something I'd heard plenty of times before. Nothing unusual. Just a bobcat. Or maybe some kids playing a prank. Or even a homeless person. I clung to these thoughts as my car rattled along the uneven road. I pushed the speed to a modest 35 miles per hour, which for my poor, overworked car, affectionately named Orangeberry, was more than enough stress. I promised myself I'd make it up to her with a good wash later. The road stretched on, quiet and eerie, as I crept through the desolate town. The broken signs let me know I was only a mile away from the highway. My breathing began to settle. Nothing's wrong, I thought. Just a creepy little detour. I reached for my phone on the passenger seat, thinking some lo-fi music might help calm my nerves. But before I could grab it, something rushed through the edge of my headlights. I screamed and slammed on the brakes, heart pounding in my chest. It hadn't been close. Whatever it was had been at the farthest reach of my brights. But my mind raced. My body reacted before I could rationalize it. Tears blurred my vision as I clutched the wheel, trying to keep driving. It's just an animal, I told myself, over and over again. Just an animal. But then I saw it. Standing on the sidewalk, as if politely waiting for me to pass, was something wrong. It was tall, unnaturally tall. Its face was sunken, almost skeletal, and its naked body hung with loose, sagging skin that piled at its joints, wrists, knees, ankles, even around its neck and jaw. Folds of flesh drooped grotesquely, illuminated for only a half second by my headlights before I hit the gas. "Sorry, Orangeberry," I muttered as I floored it. "I'll make it up to you." Panic consumed me. I was screaming obscenities now, my voice rising above the sound of the engine. "What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck?" My hands gripped the wheel so tightly, I left nail marks in the leather. Goosebumps spread across my body as adrenaline coursed through me. I swerved onto the highway, recklessly veering into the other lane, desperate to get away. I drove 80 miles per hour for a while, before finally pulling over to the side of the road. My chest heaved as I broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. I called my dad, barely able to get the words out. He answered immediately, his voice filled with concern. Through my tears, I told him everything, or at least as much as I could. I called it a man in a scary monster costume, because what else could I say? Dad's response was firm. "Call the police." I didn't want to. The idea of explaining it all, or worse, going back to that town with someone, was too much. But Dad wouldn't let it go. So I called. "I saw a man in the town back there," I told the dispatcher. "In a costume. He scared me really bad." The dispatcher asked a few questions, then assured me they'd send someone to check it out. They told me to head home. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was a costume or something else entirely. Maybe it was just bad lighting, or maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. But I can tell you this. If it was a costume, it was the most hyper-realistic thing I've ever seen. I could make out every fold of sagging skin, every wrinkle, even a few faint blue veins. It's been a month since that night. I haven't heard anything from the police. No updates, no calls. I couldn't even tell you the name of the town. It's like it disappeared as soon as I left it. I'm doing better now, but I've changed. I don't feel safe outside my car at night anymore. Not even for the short walk from my front door to the driveway. The dark feels suffocating, and if I'm outside for more than a few seconds, I start shaking uncontrollably. I don't know who to talk to or what to believe. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was something I can't explain. But at the very least, I hope you found this story entertaining. Back in 2002, I was a single mother in my mid-40s, living in Altoona, Pennsylvania. My 4-year-old son and I had just moved into a new house, trying to settle into a fresh start. We'd only been there a few weeks when, late one night, there was an unexpected knock at the front door. My son was fast asleep on the couch, and I was still up unpacking and organizing boxes, trying to make the place feel like home. Curious but cautious, I pulled back the curtain to peek outside. Standing on the porch was a petite young woman, shivering in the cold. I hesitated before opening the door. It had a chain latch, and I made sure to keep it secured as I opened it, just enough to speak to her. "Can I help you?" I asked. The woman's voice trembled as she explained that she'd locked herself out of her house. She asked if she could come in to use my phone. "Where do you live?" I asked, trying to sound neutral. She described an address, a house about a block away, just around the corner. But something about her story felt off. If she'd locked herself out, why had she come to my house? She would have passed at least half a dozen others with porch lights on. There was also a payphone across the street, a still operational one, yet she didn't seem to have considered it. Alarm bells were going off in my head. I glanced back at my son, peacefully asleep in the living room. The thought of letting a stranger into my house with him there made me uneasy. But it was a bitterly cold winter night, and she was visibly shivering. Trying to balance caution with kindness, I told her I couldn't let her in, but offered her a coat and my cell phone, which I passed to her through the small opening in the doorway. She took the coat and phone with a quiet, "Thank you," but immediately walked to the far end of the porch, out of earshot, as she made her call. My unease deepened, but I kept watching her through the door's small opening. After a few moments, I reminded her to leave the phone in the mailbox when she was done, and to bring the coat back tomorrow. She didn't say much, just nodded, before walking off into the cold night. I closed the door and locked it firmly behind me. True to her word, she left the phone in the mailbox, but the coat, that was never returned. At first, I brushed it off as one of those strange encounters you chalk up to life. But then, the phone calls started. For weeks afterward, I'd get calls at all hours of the day and night. Sometimes there'd be nothing but silence on the other end. Other times, strangers would demand to know where I was. I'd answer, confused and unnerved, only to have them hang up abruptly. It was unsettling, but I tried to move on and focus on my son. Then, 2 or 3 months later, I picked up the local Altoona newspaper. The front page stopped me cold. There was her photo, the young woman from my porch that winter night. She and 10 other suspects had been arrested in a major drug bust. Chills ran down my spine as the memories of that night came flooding back. I thought about her standing there in the freezing cold, wearing only a sleeveless shirt. How she had passed several well-lit homes in the neighborhood just to knock on mine. The creeping feeling that something wasn't right, that had stayed with me ever since. And then I thought about what could have happened. If I'd ignored my gut instincts, if I'd let her into the house, what might she have done? I glanced over at my son, playing on the floor with his toys, blissfully unaware of the danger that might have been. I'll never know for sure, but that night left an imprint on me. A reminder to trust my instincts, no matter how helpless someone might seem. Picture this. I'm about 15 or 16 years old, and it's the middle of winter, around 7 p.m. I'm coming down with a mild cold, the kind that makes you feel just unwell enough to want to stay cozy. My parents aren't home, and my sister is off at a school event, so I decide to take advantage of the quiet house and run a hot bath. About 10 minutes in, as I'm starting to relax, I hear a knock at the front door. At first, it doesn't seem odd. My family has a habit of losing their keys or forgetting something, so I assume it's one of them needing help. I get out of the bath, wrap myself in a robe, and start walking toward the door. But before I reach it, something makes me stop. I don't know why, but this uneasy feeling washes over me. Instead of opening the door, I grab my phone and send a quick text to my parents. "Hey, is one of you locked out?" As I wait for a reply, the knocking gets louder and more forceful. My dog, crated in the living room, starts barking, loud and sharp. Then my phone buzzes, and it's a call from my dad. I pick up, and his response makes my stomach drop. "Nope, I'm still at your sister's school event." Here's the adjusted continuation of your story, maintaining the tension and urgency. My dog's barking made me uneasy. She wasn't a quiet dog by any means, but she never barked at me or my family. Something about her reaction felt wrong. I decided to stay quiet and tiptoe out of the bathroom into my sister's room, which was right next to the front door. Her window blinds gave me a clear view of the porch. I pulled them back just enough to peek outside, and my heart sank. Standing at the door was a man I didn't recognize. He was wearing all black, with ragged hair and a crowbar in one hand. In his pocket, I could just make out the shape of something that looked like a gun. He pounded on the door again, this time with both hands, and my dog went ballistic. She barked like she was ready to break out of her crate, her growls reverberating through the house. Then I saw him step back from the door and motion toward a car parked in the driveway. My stomach churned as another man got out and walked up onto the porch. That was enough for me. I ran to the living room and opened my dog's crate. She bolted out, barking so loudly it was almost deafening. Her growls were low and guttural, and she threw herself at the door, clawing and snarling. She was relentless, so loud that she had to pause to take labored breaths before barking again. Through the commotion, I heard one of the men mutter, "Oh, fuck, nah," just before the slam of a car door and the crunch of gravel as the car sped away. I stood there shaking, holding on to my dog's collar as she continued barking at the now empty porch. When my dad rushed home, I could barely get the words out as I explained what had happened. We searched the yard and porch together, hoping to find some evidence of who they were or why they'd come. The only thing we found? Deep dents on the walls where the man had pounded his fists.